investigator, AI security, and independent consultant. His topic is AI workflows under attack, real CVEs in n8n. So, how many of you know n8n? Okay, almost everyone. Okay, so he is going to explain that CVE in n8n. Let's give him a big round of applause.
PDF So actually today the topic we're going to see about the n8n, CVE in n8n. I think everyone know what is, so everyone know what is actually CVE. So CVE is a common vulnerability exploit. So if if there is a new products come in, so there is a team, they will try to find out the vulnerable and they will release the CVE for that. So and we can make use of it in any of the other applications. If there is any same relevant application using in any organizations, we can use this CVE to exploit, and we can get, we can success on that particular attacks. So actually in n8n, sorry. So in n8n we have so many CVEs. Like in 2025 there is a 2 CVE, in 2026 there is 2 CVE. Okay, so in one of the CVE we can able to perform the cross-site scripting attack, and for remaining CVE there is a possible of remote code executions. Actually today we're going to see how we can perform remote code executions using some script, and how it's got exploit. So and we're going to see some vulnerable code of that application as well. So the actual CVE we're going to see about 2025-68613. So this is the actual CVE we're going to see. There is a possible of remote code executions. So any user can able to log in into the n8n and they can perform the CVE, remote code executions. There will no need of any admin user like that. So if a normal user can also able to log in, but we need a credential for that. So once we log in, we can able to perform the remote code execution. The affected version is like 1.120, and we have there's one more version called 1.121.1 and 1.122.0. So these all are the affected version for the remote code executions. So this is the actual workflow. In n8n there are once we log in, we know that we can able to create some automations. So we can able to create like instead of us, we can use the n8n to create some day-to-day activities. So we can create some, we can use some nodes. In that nodes we can create some activities, and it's like a chain reactions. It will work like a chain. Okay, so in that we have some architectures. First we'll see that. So architecture is like, so n8n is completely working based upon node programming and with the JavaScript language. Okay, so these are the things working in the back end of that n8n applications. Okay, just scroll now. So actually now the point we're going to see what is the actual root cause. Okay, so when we are trying to, there is a one of the node, we can manual triggered node. Okay, we have so many nodes. In that we have specific one node called manual triggered nodes. That manual triggered node will help you to execute the script. Okay, you can give some script or else you can give some work. So that script will get into the applications in the JavaScript format, and we can execute once it's executed in the operating system, right? So we can get the access of the server. Okay, just scroll now. So this is the actual payloads we are going to use. But before going to this, I will explain. I will show you what on all the how the actual code written in the n8n. Okay, so and we'll just see the vulnerable of that particular code, then we'll come to this, then easily we can see how we are writing the exploit. Because whenever we are into the organizations, the tools, we use many tools like Brubshoot, we use so many tools, but using Brubshoot, when we try to exploit the application, right, even prompt injections, there are so many types of injections are there, we can able to exploit that. But that and all the something like we need to imagine, because we don't know how actual code written in the backend. We need to imagine that and we need to write the script accordingly. We need to try. Okay, if we are giving some input, we need to try and we need to see what is the output coming from the server end. Then we need to change the exploit model. But there is a chance sometimes we can't able to identify actual vulnerable. Okay, once we have the actual source code, we can review and we can write the source code. We can avoid the higher level of exploit, because once we know the source, we have the source code, right, we can able to perform RCE and so many attacks. Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah. So if you can see that n8n vulnerable code in GitHub, you can get it in GitHub. Okay, so in GitHub you can see there is a folder called package. Inside the package we have a folder called workflow. So in that we have src. So specifically we have one of the code file is called expression.ts. Okay, so this is the actual vulnerable code. Okay, so once we the actual CVE comes in because of this particular vulnerable code. So in this we say that manual triggered node, this is the workflow of the manual triggered node. Okay, so once you give the input, how it's taking the input and how it's validating and how it's executing the operating system, this all the things are in this particular vulnerable code. Okay, if you see here, in the end of the code, yeah, see here, so they already written some of the prevention mechanism already. Okay, they have data.evolve, data.un-evolve, and they have written some of the functions to avoid the DOS attacks. So they already written some of the code to avoid some sort of attacks. But actually we know that this application is working based upon the node. Yeah, so in node, not only this particular function execute the command inside the operating system, there are few more functions as well. Okay, they're not yet prevent properly. Okay, so if you see here, if you're giving some input, if you're giving some instruction in that particular manual trigger nodes, so first that instruction will come and validate with this particular functions. Okay, so if this functions you injected in that particular script, right, so it automatically prevent and it will not give any output for that. It will give the null output. Okay, so undefined output will get some errors for that. Okay, will not get able to exploit that. Okay, so from this here they not yet filter the processor functions. There is a functions called process, so they didn't filter anything about the process functions. So we can use that process function to perform the exploit here. Yes, sir. Yeah, so that's why we are going to use, this is the actual yeah, this is the technical exploitations. Actually this is the script we are going to use. We are going to use in the manual trigger node to execute in the server side. Okay, so first I am taking this process because so in that particular source code they never filter the process functions. Okay, so I can use this process function to access the system process object. Okay, so then I have one more function called main.module. So this is the whenever we are creating some basic applications, right, we can use this main.module to point out which one to execute first. Okay, so we can use this. Then we have required functions. Then we can use the child process. Actually child process will help you to execute some of the commands into the system level. Okay, so that's why we are taking the child process, and even we can try without child process as well, but sometimes we will not get the proper connectivity, because when you are trying with the child process, right, so this child process will create one more process ID and give you the proper connectivity. So that's why we are using the child process here. So then we have exe syncs. So it means that whatever the commands you are giving inside this will got execute and you will get into the string format. It's in the readable format. You will get into the readable format. This is the actual code we are going to execute. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I'll show you this in the practical way. I'm just going to take this practical from the 𝐷HackMe, okay, because 𝐷HackMe already released this vulnerability, okay. So we are going to use that to see how it's actually working, how we are getting the output, okay. But when you are into the organizations, we have different sort of team, like we do some different type of testing. So black box, white box, gray box, we do different types of testing. But whenever we do the black box, gray box, that's fine. But when we work with the white box testing, right, we can easily identify so much of vulnerable. This is a type of white box testing. Once we have the source code, we can review and we can do the exploit. And even because why the CVEs comes again and again, because whenever you are writing the source code, you need to secure properly. We do some sort of development lifecycle, like with the help of DevOps, we can do some sort of security as well. But even though we need to, we need to work with the SOC team as well, because we need to properly inform to the SOC team if there is any malicious inputs come into the alert, they need to filter, okay. In the same time, they need to write the secure coding in the applications also. Once both get joined, then only you can prevent the attacks, okay. Yeah, here in this, if you see that, it's taking time to turn on. So in this, if you see, there are so much of prevention mechanism they have written. So each and every prevention mechanism, there is some individual use case. Like if you see, so if you have this evolve, if that function evolve is not properly filtered, right, we can do the remote code executions. It's like we don't want to do any bypass, we don't want to write any bypassing script, anything. Directly we can write our own script and we can able to get the server access. And there is a one more things called function. We can, if they not fix this, we can able to create a new executable functions, okay. So for each and everything they have mentioned there, we have some sort of back-end execution for that particular functions. So if you see, mostly whatever the function they have filtered, mostly it related to the server-side code executions. So if you not filter this, we have the problem, okay. For some of the function they have used for the prevent the DOS attacks and avoid some, if you are giving so much of inputs to the AA platforms, so it will properly manage and it will maintain the CPU performance. So for that, there is a few functions, okay. So the actual script I have shown you in that PPT. So same, like I just created this. So first what I am doing here, I am just taking process here, okay, process, and I am giving main.module required. So the process, because they not yet fill this process function, so I am just using the process dot main dot module dot required. So in that required, I am giving the process. What type of process I am going to create? I am going to create a child process here, okay. So in the child process, I am going to execute some commands called ID here. So ID in the sense, once we know what type of operating system they are using, so based on that we can insert the command here. So I am giving ID. So in once I give the ID, I will get the output in the string format. Yeah, so I think we got the system. So this is the login they have already given, tryhackme@thm.local, and we have the password try12345. This is the normal user, not an admin user. Okay, even this exploit will work for both. If you're configuring the n8 in the cloud, if you have the configured n8 in the local system, for both this will work. This exploit will work. Meanwhile, if you have any doubts, you can ask me because it's taking time to load. Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah. Some.
Are you also sanitizing and taking care of some vulnerable modules like OS modules or such, so that if that module gets loaded somehow, that cannot be exploited?
Yeah, we need to. I mean, you are asking that I am taking care of filtering that exploit modules, right?
Exploit vulnerable modules like OS modules. So are they taking care of that?
I mean, I'm not able to get your question
So
properly.
there are some vulnerable modules like let's say OS module is there in JavaScript, right?
Yes, yes.
So are they in the current prevention? Are they also taking care of the such vulnerable modules?
Yeah, that's why they have already released the one more patch. If you try the same script, it will not work.
Okay.
So they are, I mean, in the next patches, what they did, they just filter that vulnerability modules. But even though we need to do the code review again because they fix as per this particular exploit. But if you do again the code review, we need to find if there is any other possible way or is there any bypass way. We need to identify and need to prevent that because they are maintaining each and every line. So if there is any, I mean, they not yet properly implemented the complete flow. They just given that okay, if there is a dot require dot function dot global, if that modules comes in, filter this when you are giving some input. So it's doing like that. Okay, so we need to go through the entire code again, so then only we can able to identify. But this exploit is fixed in this in the current versions. But anyway, once we do the code review, then we come to know that because when you are doing the code review, you can't confirm that the entire application is secure because every time of doing some small changes also, that attacks may be possible to comes again. Okay, in the different way, not in the same way, in the different way.
So let's say some attacker tries to leverage the worker thread or some worker script in JavaScript, like
I can't get it.
Worker script, worker purchase.
No, I'm not able to get the point properly.
So yeah, so let's say some hacker is trying to leverage the worker script or worker thread to execute some other JavaScript file, external malicious script. So is it preventable?
I mean, based on the code, that is also. I mean, you are asking in the current versions, or else you are asking is that attack. You are asking about whether attacker can do like that.
Yeah, whether attacker can do like that.
Yeah, that can be possible because this is like a own exploit writing. So this is not something like we use the tool and we do this. So this is the own exploitation. When once we review the code, so we can. I mean, anyhow. So whenever you are writing the applications, in that application there is a place on how the input should take in, on how the output should get executed. So that everything we need to properly. Look into the code. So once we see the code, then we come to know okay, actually how the input is getting and how the input is executing in the back end and how the server is giving the output. Okay, and what type of filter mechanism they use for the input, that every point we need to monitor and we need to identify okay, so whether if there is a functions they are taking, this is the evolve method, evolve injection module. Okay, so when they are taking into the evolve functions, so if they not prevent that all the points right, so directly attacker can execute. That's why they just mentioned few things. Okay, so once we do the review, we can write your own exploit. Yeah.
So, are you using something like all the available database like exploit DB and all to find the vulnerabilities, or you would recommend some best practices to identify vulnerabilities like zero-day vulnerabilities and which are not yet published? So, for developers, what best practices would you recommend?
Okay, for developer, so we say that okay, so whenever you are, we know the actual workflow of the application, what you will do, how to the application should get run, everything we know, right? So we need to properly sanitize, and the developer should know all the functions, what on the functions are there. So the developer should know, the OWASP top 10. So based on the OWASP top 10, if the developers build that application, then we can prevent some sort of attacks. Okay, so before launching the application, if the organization do the white box testing, so by doing the code review, then it's much helpful to prevent more attacks. Okay, so we need to do the test, and we need to the developer should know how the OWASP top 10 attacks are working. So based on that, if they develop, then it's maybe preventable.
Like we have tools, Black Duck and all those available, but so at very beginning level.
Okay, but nowadays we have Claude. so the cloud can able to do the code review. I mean, actually, initially when we try to do the code review, we need to identify each and every lines. But now we have a cloud. So if we use the cloud, we can able to once we upload the code, it will review and it will show you the what actual exploit can be possible. So once we know that, we can easily fix that. Nowadays we have that. So we have that.
Yeah, so just to add to what you just mentioned, I think it all boils down to the process of the model that we should implement, which is secure by design, right? So when you implement that model, so a lot of issues, a lot of the vulnerabilities that you might experience in the production, right? So might also eliminated when you follow the secure by design model. So you might have to think about shift left concept, integrating security into every aspect of your development process.
Yeah.
So that just my 2 cents, just want to add into whatever you just.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think the system got fine. IP. Yeah, so now we see that the applications, okay, so it's running in the port number 5678. Okay, so now just try to log in with the help of this credential. Yeah, so I just logged in. Okay. Yeah, so see here is if I can able to take a node, manual trigger node. Okay, so in this what I can do, just yeah, so it's taking I'm just making big. Editor. Just a minute.
Like with malicious things and like some more labs won't run in like run in this Wi-Fi, I guess, because they they added some good firewall.
Okay.
It is cloud sec, right?
But we are using
I got it, but if some pages are not opening, then
Okay.
think that not server's issue, it's their firewall issue.
Okay, then I'll try once again. Let's see.
Like you can just tell them.
Okay, I'll show you this image.
Network, because of network restrictions, we can't show this type of things.
Okay. Okay. I thought there is some network restriction, we can't able to load some of the module. They are saying that okay, fine, no issue. When you have that manual trigger mode, right? So once you get in, there is a field to add field. Okay, so in that execution phase, we can write that script function return this process module, the child process. If you give the ID, you can see the ID value here, so you can able to properly view the ID here. So if you run some of the command, and if you want to do control the server, you can able to inject that bash script, or else you can run the Python script to get the access of the server. Okay, so I mean, to prevent this, we need to work with the SOC team. Okay, in SOC team, they need to write the rule to prevent this entire just a minute, I'll open that. Yeah, so this is the actual rule. Okay, so they need to just write, and they need to mention the keywords, what and all the keywords when the attackers try to execute this and all the keywords. Okay, so if this keyword got pop up in that SOC team, I mean alert, they need to inform the team to prevent this IP address. Okay, so to prevent this attack, and few more things we can do with the secure SDLC model to secure the code while doing the development itself. And once we work with the SOC team to inform them to prevent what and all the functions or that to execute in the server side. Once they fix in the once they configured in the Splunk or else Elasticsearch tool, so both the team can support, and we can avoid the RCE and different types of sort of attacks. So yeah, so if you guys have any doubts, you can ask me. Again, I'll just try once again to execute. If nobody have the doubts, then we can move, right? Yeah.
This check that is there, it's just checking the keywords in the command, like if it is adding a remote command execution or not. So is there any other way that we can trigger a process other than this command that would be a vulnerability in this case?
Yeah, we can trigger without here just for example we are saying this command. So whatever we know that whatever the function will help to execute on the server side. So if you add that few functions in the keywords, then we can able to prevent that. Okay, based on your application, because if you are using Node, that Node based that particular function can only execute in the server side. Other function not able to do that, right? So if you know that functions, actual functions, if you can add it here and you can prevent that. Yeah. Question get done.
Okay, that's all. Okay, thanks Raj for the wonderful session, and so please give him a big round of applause. Okay, thanks.